Welcome, sisters and brothers, to our first meeting of the year, and Happy New Year to everyone. I hope that everyone enjoyed their time with their family and friends during the holidays, and people are prepared to take on revolutionary organizing in 2012 with both optimism and rigor. Before I talk about what the PSL has in store for the ruling class in terms of class warfare this year, I'd like to give an overview and synopsis of 2011, which the latest issue of Liberation aptly termed the Year of Resistance. If you haven't gotten that copy of Liberation, make sure to get it. It's a really good one. A young man named Mohammed Bouazizi shouted, quote, "How do you expect me to make a living?" End quote. Moments before dousing himself in gasoline and lighting himself on fire in the final days of 2010 outside a government building in Tunisia. His final words echoed throughout the world in 2011 as millions of workers were galvanized into action by the ongoing crisis of capitalism that is taking poor and working people and shoving them into even more grinding poverty and miserable exploitation. All workers must ask this question: how are we supposed to make a living? For us as socialists, we understand that this is a universal question, and that there are plenty of short-term answers for workers. We sell our labor to the capitalists. We work as teachers, civil servants, transportation workers, service workers. We build things. We go to Walmart for a smiling batch of exploitation each day. We sell corn, hot dogs, DVDs, and other items on streets, at swap meets, and inside the trains. We hustle items at yard sales. And when everything else fails, we sell rocks on the corner or we boost cars. But none of this makes more than a subsistence living, oftentimes without access to health care, education, decent housing, and other rights that all workers deserve. And that is why there needs to be a long-term answer to this universal question. And we believe that 2011, the Year of Resistance, was exactly that. Within hours of Bouazizi's death, there were protests in the thousands in the streets of Tunisia that culminated in a revolution ousting dictator Ben Ali on January 14, 2011, proving once and for all that we as socialists and revolutionaries must be prepared at any moment, because we never know what event will spark a revolution. By February, the sparks of revolution in Tunisia had lit a fire in Egypt, where Hosni Mubarak was ousted, and where an ongoing and developing revolution is taking aim at the military dictatorship right now that was installed as a last-ditch effort to prevent workers' control in Egypt. Then we started seeing on television the signs of expanding consciousness here in the US, as tens of thousands of workers in Wisconsin took over the Capitol building to fight against the union-busting campaign, spearheaded by the governor of Wisconsin, who many began to call, quote, Hosni Walker, drawing a clear parallel between the experiences of workers in Egypt with those of workers here in the US. This was the first major labor battle in a very long time that was struggle-oriented, and it reawakened a broad fight-back movement with organized labor in the US that has continued to struggle and found allies in the Occupy movement. Starting in May and bleeding into the summer, anti-austerity, anti-capitalist movements erupted in Spain and Greece as tens of thousands of young people occupied public squares and fought police in the streets. These movements were strengthened by organized labor and a large communist presence. The youth called themselves, quote, the indignant ones, end quote. And this eventually would inspire tens of thousands of students in Chile by the end of the summer as well to struggle in a similar manner. In July, over 6,000 California prisoners participated in a hunger strike in one of the largest and most advanced prisoners' movements in US history that is continuing to develop today. The hunger strike was repeated later on in the year, and prisoners at Pelican Bay, the leading prison, and other prisoners throughout California are continuing to build this movement to win demands from the CDCR. In August, tens of thousands of youth took to the streets of London in some of the largest street battles in decades after the brutal killing of Mark Duggan by cops. The uprising lasted for several days and was only subdued when the ruling class in the United Kingdom gave the okay to raid working class neighborhoods block by block, house by house, and round up as many youth as they could presumably charge with participating in the uprising. Thousands were arrested, including some as young as 12 and 13 years old. Then on September 17th, the Occupy movement was born in New York, taking aim at Wall Street and by extension the capitalist system itself. Occupy encampments opened up across the US in hundreds of cities and began taking continuous action through the end of November, when the last standing encampment here in Los Angeles was raided. This movement posed such a significant threat to the US ruling class that they gave the task of organizing coordinated assaults on peaceful demonstrators to Homeland Security. And by the end of the year saw fit to sign into law a bill that would permit the indefinite military detention of US citizens for no reason at all. There is no doubt in our minds that by the end of 2011, the wealthiest and most powerful ruling class in human history was forced onto the defensive by a true working class upsurge. And this year of resistance, our task in the PSL is to push this working class offensive forward. And that's exactly what we did in 2011. When the revolution and the protests were first beginning in Egypt, we held many solidarity demonstrations with the people of Egypt demanding that Hosni Mubarak be ousted and that aid to Mubarak and the regime there be ended immediately. These demonstrations took place all over the country. When Wisconsin erupted, we had people on the ground from throughout the Midwest on a daily basis there. And all of our speeches, writings, and all of our great work that went into the struggle in Wisconsin and other parts of the Midwest, you can read about it in the book that is in the back. You should pick it up. It's only $5, about the Wisconsin struggle. On March 19th, we held our annual demonstrations against the Iraq War, and these were massive demonstrations here in Los Angeles. We had over 5,000 people, and this is again at a time when people were still in a little bit of a honeymoon period, thinking that Obama might end the wars. And those demonstrations were once again all over the country. When the rest of the left and so-called socialists were cheering on the demonstrators in Libya, who they wanted to compare to the demonstrators in Egypt, which really isn't the same thing, and cheering on for US intervention, what we did instead is we held a national speaking tour that included Cynthia McKinney, who had just been on a tour in Libya itself, talking about the bombing campaigns led by European and other Western forces like the US in Libya, speaking out against US intervention and NATO intervention in Libya. And that tour was at a time when, it was prior to Libya actually undergoing the developments that we know about today. And at that time, all these other leftist and socialist groups were, cheering on the US imperialists and criticizing us for defending the Libyan people's right to self-determination. And in the end, we were proven correct. What's going on now? There's, massive massacres of black Libyans going on. The conditions in Libya have gotten even worse. And right now, the US government and other Western forces have opened up a nice wide gaping hole for economic intervention in Libya, which is taking place already. On May Day, we held another successful Workers' Day demonstration all around the country. Here in Los Angeles in particular, the Answer Coalition, which the PSL is a steering committee member of, gained equal partnership with the labor unions and the immigrant rights groups in executing May Day. This is a huge step forward for us in the immigrant rights movement, and since that time, we've been on equal footing with our allies in the May Day Coalition for other actions that took place during the Occupy movement. We're building much stronger relations with the labor unions, and this is something that we can look forward to in the coming year to really pay off. We did a lot of prison solidarity work with the hunger strikers. We have a lot of great features that you can look up on PSL Web that included statements from prisoners who participated in the hunger strikes, interviews. We held a lot of meetings in support of the hunger strikers, and that was a significant area of our work. As far as police brutality is concerned, we led extremely successful movements. Here in Southern California, we participated in the Kelly Thomas case. We're now working on Mike Naito, and we have an expansive campaign in Long Beach with many victims that have gotten involved. In Syracuse, we also have a pretty significant police brutality movement there, and our comrades there have just won a new civilian review board for the community of Syracuse. And so it shows that police brutality movements can be effective in making some change within the system itself. And we have another movement similar to this one, a historic one in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is the highest rate of police shootings and police violence anywhere in the country right now. Albuquerque is the most deadly city to be in when dealing with the cops, and our comrades there are doing a great job. March Forward members in the party traveled up to Washington, to Fort Lewis, and held an extremely successful forum there and press conference that garnered national attention about the ongoing epidemic of suicides in the military and the position of officers in the military in forcing the rank and file soldiers to continue to go to these endless and pointless wars for no reason at all, despite the trauma that they suffer from being in these wars, PTSD and such. Then in October, we held our annual protests against the Afghanistan war, hundreds of demonstrations around the country, which was extremely successful. And by October, we were already participating in the Occupy movement here in Los Angeles. October 1st is when Occupy began here. And we participated in the Occupy movement all over the country. We led some of the most significant demonstrations, from a demonstration for Troy Davis that connected with Occupy Wall Street, enlivening it and making it a militant and united front, all the way down to the labor struggles that we added, the labor component we've added here to Los Angeles, the Occupy ICE demonstration, which was one of the last demonstrations we did with the Occupy movement in conjunction with the labor unions. And when we passed by the detention center, you could hear hundreds of detained undocumented workers pounding on the walls in solidarity with our demonstration, which was a really powerful moment for a lot of people. Our participation in the Occupy movement around the country has garnered a lot of attention. We pushed it politically to take aim at the system itself of capitalism. We also were able to push it in a lot of parts of the country to take on more militant actions and more significant direct action. So we should be proud of our participation in the Occupy movement. Also, we had conferences all over the country talking about socialism that brought hundreds and hundreds of people all throughout the country, including a significant Midwest conference where a lot of comrades traveled to talk about socialism, and we've garnered a lot of recruits from these conferences. We've started new branches in new parts of the country because of these conferences and because of the Occupy movement. We're gaining new contacts all over the country, and we can look forward to expanded work in the coming year. And so the coming year will be an exciting one. And as we continue to go on the attack against the ruling class, we have a lot to look forward to. Peta talked about the campaign that we're going to run, vice presidential campaign with Peta Lindsay and Jadi Osorio from New York. And we can expect to get a lot out of that, I think. We're going to be traveling throughout parts of the Midwest and the South, and hopefully everyone here will get involved in the campaign as well. It'll be significant here in Los Angeles since we have one of the candidates with us. The March Forward opened up a Veterans Center, which is going to help to provide services for veterans who face issues of PTSD, employment, education, working through their GI Bill, and also helping to galvanize them into action and organizing to put an end to the wars. We're expanding our police brutality work here in Southern California. We're moving into Downey, and we hope to move into Los Angeles in a significant way in the coming year. And last but certainly not least, the Occupy movement has not gone away. Many people think that it has because the encampments have been broken up, but actually the Occupy movement is taking on a much more significant form now in fighting the evictions of people from their homes. People are filling up these homes, they're stopping the evictions from happening, and we're taking on a form of struggle that really hasn't been seen since the 1930s, when communists were leading unemployed councils to put people's belongings back in their home and prevent evictions from happening and maintaining people's homes. And so hopefully this is an area of work that can be expanded upon as the Occupy movement continues to grow and as we infuse our influence into that form of struggle. And these are just some of the things that are going on. You can expect a wide array of things to come forward as we go forward. We're going to continue to do conferences all throughout the country We'll have a couple of them here in Los Angeles. We're going to continue to do public classes, forums like this one that you're at. We're going to continue to have International Workers' Day on May Day, and you can expect significant demonstrations throughout the year that we'll be taking a major part in. And so everyone should be excited and get involved in 2012. It's going to be an exciting year. And we're already off, like I said, like I've mentioned, to a solid start in building towards a new system, because that's really what the goal is of the PSL, and that's the goal of any progressive or revolutionary in this system, which is broken. And the real answer to that universal question of how we can expect to make a living is by resisting, by fighting back, and by winning a new system that will allow all of us to have a dignified life, a system where we can have education, healthcare, housing, jobs, and other rights guaranteed, because we would own and control all of the wealth of society, unlike the current system that allows a tiny minority to live lavishly from the wealth that we are producing. The capitalist system is the most barbaric and absurd system in human history, not because of pervasive violence and barbarism per se, but because it is the only system in human history where having too much creates misery. It isn't having too little food or too few homes that cause people to go hungry or be homeless. It's the opposite. Having too much food leads to hunger. Having too many homes causes more homelessness. And this happens all because the capitalists can't turn the same rate of profit if they have too much of something to sell. But the function of society shouldn't be to make a profit for a handful of rich white men. No, the function of society should be to ensure the health and advancement of everyone. And that is what we are going to do with our new society once we take power away from those rich white men and their armed thugs. The system we are fighting for, sisters and brothers, is socialism, and that is the system that we need. It is absolutely criminal that Bouazizi's last words were about his oppression as a worker. We need socialism so that no one else in the world has to waste their last words, words that should be reserved for our closest loved ones, on such an absurd question.